hand over to the first panel, let me remind you that you have on your screen the possibility to use the Slido function to raise questions. Later on, we might have some polls you are asked to vote, but use this function to have some questions addressed to the panels. And with this word, I hand over to Alex, who is here representing our technical program managers, and we'll start with the first panel. Good luck, Alex.
Thank you very much, Christian, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening from wherever in the world you have joined us. I am to open the first panel of this symposium titled Services Future of ATM Infrastructure, which is, of course, a topic that we could talk about for days. So we will focus on two aspects, and we are now 35 minutes into the symposium, and we already heard that it's all about capacity and growth and efficiency and digitalization. And I think our panel really reflects this focus that we are going to have once we get out of the pandemic. We will focus on two subjects. The first is actually the network. It is about managing the traffic once it returns, and it will return. And the second subject is virtual centers. I will quickly introduce our speakers in the order of appearance. We will start with Silde Young, who is the INM program manager at Eurocontrol. He will be followed by Philippe Chaffero, the deputy CIO of Skyguide. And if I may add, also the working group of the chair of the newly created working group 122 on Virtual Center. The third in line will be Raul Berrocal de la Calle. He's the ITEC chief engineer of Indra, and followed by Philippe Bauchet, the ATC product line director from Thales Airspace Mobility Solutions, so that we also get the technical and technological aspect of the future ATM. Of course, we need to work the traffic, and this is done by our air traffic controllers. Today we have Eugenio Diotalevi from the Padua ACC representing IFATCA. And of course, we need to put our work into the proper regulatory framework, which is represented by EASA. Today, Manuel Rivas Villa, the manager of ATM Oversight, will speak to us. But of course, no panel is a good panel without a good moderator. And I'm very happy to have Peter Hotham, the Deputy Executive Director of the SJU, moderating our panel. Peter, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Alex. And thank you to everybody and welcome. So we're at our EuroCai Symposium panel number 1. So we set the scene here, and I think it's a good follow-on from some of the words that were said in the introduction session. So this session, the future for ATM infrastructure services. So services, that future. So, and before we dive in straight into the presentation, I'd just like to take a few minutes myself to set the scene. In fact, the next phase of research and implementation for my own organization, RJU, and many of our partners who are present today, is the realization of a digital European sky, achieved through a digital transformation in air traffic management and enabled by technical services. So we have this word services. Services, what's that? Well, today, I can put it quite simply, I think, for all of us, that we all intuitively think about services from our daily life. We know if we've just received a good service. We smile, perhaps. We also, conversely, we feel bad and perhaps even angry if we receive a bad service. So while this notion of services has also been embedded within air traffic for many years, so air traffic services is a proper regular term. It's the complexity and the rigidity of our technical systems that are behind this that is today giving our customers the feeling that they don't receive the service they need or want. So let us today explore what's behind this feeling and what we try to do to avoid this bad service effect. And I'd like to use a few references that I think will be relevant at this point as well. So today, our architecture, our airspace architecture, is the result of national historical evolution. It's based on a vertical integration of service provision. The airspace configuration limits the capacity and has poor scalability with its fixed national structures. The air traffic services, they themselves are also vertically integrated, supported by local applications with limited or no interoperability over a transnational geographic area. There are, let's acknowledge, good local pockets of automation, but overall, this is still very limited. And information sharing is based on, let's call them archaic protocols and practices, resulting in a low level of meaningful information exchange. Then underpinning our air traffic services is a technical infrastructure that at the very least you would call highly fragmented at the European level. So in 2019, the Airspace Architecture study and the Wise Persons group advocated for a target architecture of a single European airspace system, which was the Digital European Sky. And in an extract from the Wise Persons Group report, which was published in April 2019, they said, the AAS has illustrated that increased automation and virtualization, hold the greatest promise for effectively balancing supply and demand while ensuring scalability and higher level of resilience of the system. It shows that transformation towards a digital European sky can deliver a virtual defragmentation of Europe's ATM system, irrespective of national borders or functional airspace blocks. So pretty powerful words, really meaning change is required. It's not optional. And it's required to airspace configuration and management with the introduction of data service providers and the delivery of air traffic services from virtual centers, just to name a few. Dynamic airspace configuration will enable capacity on demand and improved environmental performance. Data service providers and virtual centers enable scalable service delivery and provide the foundation for advanced automation functionality. This future is for tomorrow, and we need to develop high levels of automation and optimization, supported by service orientation in the technology which we use. And this needs to be across all of our technical systems. And then they need to be exposed through our best-in-class air traffic management services. And this service-oriented air traffic management approach enables the separation of the major concerns for our stakeholders and customers around scalability, being able to independently scale up capacity on each of the service layers, resilience, more robust against disruptions, flexibility, allowing more to implement new business models, both competition and collaboration models, flexibility following evolution to allow the evolution of separately of the service layers to accelerate that innovation, key for achieving the objectives that we've said. Now, these services are dependent on also a high reliability, low latency data exchange networks to allow geographic decoupling. And as I said, the future is for tomorrow. So today, we'll hear from a number of our speakers who are fully involved in all of these preparations. So our panel's in two parts. We first hear from the European Network Manager about user-centric integrated network manager, followed by a 5-minute Q&A. And that Q&A will be supported by Slido. So please put your questions in through Slido and we'll use them as we can during the Q&A. Once that Q&A is done, we then take a deep dive into the world of virtual centers. 5 speakers, Alex introduced them, I won't repeat it again, but we cover a wide breadth of representation there. And then we'll have another Q&A for up to 15 minutes, supported again by Slido. So let's begin. And I now invite Sil Phil de Gang to take the stage to tell us about the network manager's digital transformation in ATM through the integrated network manager. So over to you.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you very much for this introduction. And before we deep dive on the details on the INM program, which I have prepared for you today, I really would like to share with you some initial thoughts on the real stuff on digital transformation. As digital transformation, because this is really where the INM program, it's all about digital transformation. And when we talk about digital transformation, we talk about our people. And that's the case for all industries. It's not just for aviation or ATM, it's for all industries. It's people and their method of working. It's moving, for instance, from 2 controllers per sector to 1 controller. It's the digital autopilot. It's the digital controller. We also talk about higher levels of automation when we talk about digital transformation. And there people rightfully wonder about their future. There's a future for everybody, and perhaps it's even a more exciting future than today. And what we experience there is that it really requires a change in culture. It's about people and how they operate. It's what we call the digital transformation culture. And to be successful in that digital transformation journey, we really need to promote and live a new working environment with integrated team thinking. It's about transparency, trust, respect. It's a no blaming culture and a no silos culture. So it's really moving from a vertical hierarchical organization to a more horizontal flat organization. And that's what INM, the program the network management recently launched, is all about, the integrated network manager. 3 words, but I really want to emphasize on the first one, integrated. It's about an integration of capabilities. It's about an integration of all types of data that we provide to our different stakeholders. It's an integration of future digital products that will be integrated on a common digital platform. It's an integration of processes, etc. And that is really what we want to bring in the near future with this INM program. It's a user-centric design. It's a fielding of new functionalities that we will tune to the market needs, and it's all about creating value for our different stakeholders. Now, below the skyline, as we typically say, there is always another challenge for ATM, and it's exactly the same for the network manager's operational systems. Because our current operational systems, they have for more than 25 years enabled Eurocontrol to manage successfully the European network. However, they are now reaching their technical limits in terms of performance, in terms of scalability, in terms of agility. Because today's subsystems, they have often been developed independently. We needed functionality, so we introduced a new system, and etc., etc. So they were developed quite siloed, could we say, and by doing so, a monolithic architecture appeared. And that architecture over time becomes very difficult to maintain, and especially very difficult to maintain at reasonable costs. So leveraging onto the latest technologies with the INM program, we will transform, and I really need to focus here on the word transform. It's just simply not replacing the current systems, it's really transforming the current systems from a vertical siloed architecture to a horizontal microservices architecture. And with that new architecture, we really want to introduce innovation, and we really want NM, the network manager, to deliver even more integrated business services and products to our different stakeholders. And to do so, last year we launched, the Eurocontrol Network Manager launched its largest ever call for tender to select industrial partners. And we really want to select industrial partners capable in delivering state-of-the-art digital solutions. And just for your information, we are still in that tendering process, but we will finalize that process by the end of June. Now, just to give you some ideas how we see that integration, well, it's all about data. So it's a very data-centric design. Integration will be data-driven. So, and that's also the reason why we already started to build a digital platform, a new digital platform. And that digital platform will be accessible, but also open for all aviation stakeholders. It will provide opportunities to our stakeholders to transform their own business. And it will offer, as we call it, a one-stop shop of functionality. So whether it's the use of operational data in terms of flight and flow management, or it's the use of the extraction of business intelligence data to build aviation reports, all will be possible. And that will be possible in a scalable, but also a cloud-native manner. We will also develop our own digital products that will focus on user experience, value creation through that data, and they will also be provided through that digital platform. So these digital products, and Peter already touched upon, will also be delivered as a service, and which then immediately creates operational and also business value for the different stakeholders. What is important to know is that the platform will offer even more B2B capabilities. And that will be based on typical commercial off-the-shelf, mainstream internet technologies and standards. It will also be offered via the new pens. And they're very important is that we call it the integrated data layer. It's the one single source of truth. All types of data will be accessible, non-operational data or operational data, business intelligence data. And I like to compare this with the typical Amazon.com or the Bol.com platforms that we see today. If you want to buy something, especially now in the COVID crisis situation, you just log into a platform and you can buy something. Well, this is the idea we also have with the integrated data layer and the new platform that we are building. If you want to use aviation data, simply connect to that platform. What also happened within the INM program is that we will solve current issues we have in terms of flight consistency between the systems. And as mentioned before, we really want to encourage a multi-speed of deployment tailored to the user needs. So I think we should seize this opportunity, especially now in times of COVID, but we should also be very realistic. Digital transformation journeys are not easy, so there will be some difficult moments, but I think we should above all not resist the change, but I think we should embrace it. And this, Peter, ends my briefing on the INM program. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Sil. And we've got a little bit of time for a couple of questions. Perhaps one on when do you expect to see the first deliverables from this INM program?
Yeah, that's a very good question, Peter. Thank you. Well, as mentioned before, we are still in that tendering process, so we are now finalizing the contract negotiation phase, and this is really one of the main topics that we are discussing with the industrial partners. But we're already started to build that digital platform. So to become very concrete on that one, in the next NM release, NM26, we will deploy operationally the first version of that digital platform, also with a couple of applications that we migrated from one current service layer to the digital platform. So the fielding of INM will start rather soon. Now, when the major deliverables or operational deliverables in terms of flight and flow management, EAD replacement will come into service, it will take a bit more time. We're expecting there the winter period 23-24 as a major milestone where we really want to achieve a first operational milestone. But to do so, we also need to take care of the fact that transforming legacy systems from a monolithic architecture to a microservice architecture, it takes some time to technically do so. But still, again, with the latest technologies, we try to field the new digital products as soon as possible.
Okay, thanks. So, and are you working currently today with your stakeholders to make sure they're ready to take this data on board as well? Because it needs to be both sides of the parties, doesn't it? Yes,
absolutely correct. And I think the implementation, or at least the needs of our stakeholders, will be key for the success of INM. Because as mentioned before, we really want to create value for our stakeholders. And that cannot be done just by fielding new products without having a huge involvement of those stakeholders. So throughout the different work groups we currently have with our stakeholders, we will make sure that their needs will be correctly addressed into the INM program. Absolutely.
Yeah. So do you think that all the stakeholders, military as well, are ready? You know, who are you working with at the moment? What's the range?
Well, there is indeed the fact that once we start fielding new operational products, there is always kind of a backward compatibility that we need to foresee in order to make sure that the different stakeholders can accommodate changes into the network. So there again, it's again the discussion we will need to have with all of them in order to make sure that fielding new capabilities is in line and is aligned with their needs as well.
Okay, thanks. So I think we need to move on now, but there's a few questions starting to come in, which I know we can pick up at the end of the session as well. So if you've sent some questions in, it's not been covered yet, we can pick that up at the end. So what I'd like to do now is just move on, but thank you, Sil, for your presentation, very interesting. I'd like to now welcome Philippe Chaffero to the floor and to present his view on the virtual centers and their digital transformation. So Philippe, over to you.
Thank you, Peter. Could I have the slide, please? Thanks. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. So it's a pleasure to be with you today and to have this opportunity to present a high-level vision of what means service future for ATM infrastructure by Skyguide, the Swiss air navigation service provider. To explore this topic, I propose that we look at it along 4 highlights. From the source of transformation, because this transformation have strong roots out of our global environment, to the way we have interpreted it into the Skyguide context. Next, please. This is an evidence that globalization is a major source of transformation for us. We see the emergence and development of more and more worldwide services available to support our activity. And let's just think about the CNS domain, where global, worldwide, seamless communication, navigation positioning, and even surveillance with, of course, something like the Aireon offer or the AirSense service provision are now a reality because of this worldwide extension of the terrestrial network links and, of course, the space capabilities. So one major transformation source into our environment. Next one, please. Another evidence from the root of the transformation is the digitalization. Under these buzzwords hides a deep transformation of our environment by offering data processing capabilities well beyond what we have had in the past. To give some consistent to this buzzword, I have illustrated here the underlying component that such a word embarks. At the bottom, the starting point for me is the capability to transform all analog information into a digital one. Then, with this digital information, we will benefit from the global seamless connectivity to have this information carried everywhere. In consequence, it allows a global sharing of the information wherever you are sitting. And finally, on top of this, this global sharing creates new automation and consequently operating mobile capabilities supported by incredible rising processing power. Next one, please. Closer to our ATM business. The transformation necessary to cope with the challenge in front of us has been addressed in the new Single European Sky objective of the European Commission. It was already illustrated by the previous speaker, by Henrik and by Peter. It has been initially presented by the SGU into the Airspace Architecture study and is now materialized into the new version of the CESAR ATM Master Plan. One of the main evolution that I can see in this intention is a move from the existing vertical integrated provision of a navigation service by national ANSPs to a seamless and network-oriented structure or an horizontally layered one. It was also mentioned by Peter, the transformation from the vertical to an horizontal architecture. This will offer new benefits like a true capacity on demand and an effective contingency capabilities between the European NSP, all contributing then to the most efficient possible management of the overall European aviation network, like previously said. Next, please. Last but not least, a quite topic on the hype today, the cybersecurity. This is also a source of transformation for us because we are now going beyond the basics of cyber protection to what militaries will call a real communicate, command and control capability concept based on the two major principles we have to put in our environment in order to prevent the cybersecurity threat. The real zero trust principle and the defense in depth. And the time to protect all critical assets from hostiles by putting them in bunkers, just protected by antivirus, is really over. You have really to be more proactive by developing your intrusion detection capabilities and then managing in reaction your defensive force. And you need the appropriate architecture to do that. It could not be done into the traditional legacy way we develop our systems today. Next one, please. So to illustrate this, all this transformation have had an influence on the way we have materialized a future change in our ATM business operating model by Skyguide. And you recognize here the virtual center model. And so to introduce this, the way we have, we were coming to the virtual center, let me now bring you to Switzerland, some fresh air, some mountains, but also we are facing a typical European problem with with our small country, with our confetti airspace. Due to historic reason, we have two area control centers, one in Geneva and another one in Zurich. This made maybe sense in the past, but today it's really not efficient anymore. And with the move to free route airspace, this becomes anachronistic. Unfortunately, shutting down one or both and creating a new one was not acceptable from a federalist Swiss perspective, so the political dimension, and also from the labor point of view, the social dimension. So our answer to this issue, this paradox, was to launch the Virtual Center program in 2014, and in fact to overcome something that is experienced also at the European level. The spread of many centers, across many locations, with a very vertical siloed approach. On this journey, we have now reached a point where we have one system in Zurich based on an open and service-oriented architecture, familiar word, which allows the provision of ATM service location independently, also mentioned by Peter previously. We have moved away from the locked monolithic ATM system architecture. An ACC can manage an airspace location independently. Let me illustrate more in detail what is the horizontally connected information management system I speak about. Also a nice buzzword, but what does it mean exactly? And to go more into the detail, what means an open and service-oriented approach that we promote through this transformation. Next one, please. The virtual center operating model presented above is really realized by the deployment of a new horizontally layered architecture that will implement our location independence target and a modern information management architecture. This is largely inspired, of course, by the ICAO SWIM concept, to the point that we sometimes identify it internally as our SWIM native architecture. Each of the 5 layers on the slides, including our ATM infrastructure in the bottom, counts on the service provided by the layer below and provides service to the one above it. At each of this layer, we can easily map the technical capabilities that are hidden behind. And you see on the right side of the slide, there is different layers in technical terms. Of course, the functionalities your software has to demonstrate to create an efficient human-machine interface. Then one layer below, the application management layer that you have to create, often based on an SOA implementation inside an ESB framework. One layer below, a universal messaging layer for information exchange between the apps that is often part also of an ASB framework. I've not used the word apps by random. It's because you can really do the link with what you experience on your mobile phone regarding the application management. And if you compare to the current traditional classical situation, I think we have a huge gap to cross in order to have our application as flexible as what you experience on your iPhone. And no more individual platform for each application anymore. This is the next layer, replaced by a unified platform supporting thousands of virtual machines if you want to have it traditionally in your premises, but you also could even count on hosting capabilities from private or public clouds. Really well available on the market today. And of course, last but not least, the bottom layer, the global data networks to exchange seamlessly all the required data between the different elements of your architecture. Last one, please. As my final message from this short speech about service future of ATM infrastructure as seen by SkyGuide, let me illustrate the different types of services in line by positioning them and this in different service flavor, I would say, on a well-known architectural framework, and to position more precisely what means really services in this architectural view. This type of view is also helpful when discussing either with your top management of the NSP or with a solution designer from the software development side to well understand each other when we speak about a service. Because the service could have different flavor according to the different layer you are addressing. I use here to illustrate the architecture modeling reference language called Archimate, coming from the Open Groups standards. And this language is supporting the well-known architectural TOGAF framework. So this is a way to model in architecture terms the different elements of your system. And this is really organized into this 3-layer, business layer, application layer, and technological layer. You perfectly recognize in this drawing that we have services at the 3 level. And this is exactly called services by Archimate. You have in the yellow part, the business layer supporting the strategic capabilities. You have in the blue part, the application services, the expression of the behavior of your application towards the business, and that you could translate somewhere into the software, the services of your software. And the 3rd layer, the technological one, that is, you could easily translate into the hosting and communication services. And creating this approach to really well identify the different notion of service in the 3 layers help you to really have this service transformation effective in your environment. And that's all about my view on the service future in the ATM business, and thank you for your attention.
Thanks very much. Thanks, Philippe. So now quickly moving on to to Raul Berrocal to talk to us about the technical approach to realizing a virtual center. So Raul, over to you.
Yeah. Hello. Thank you, Peter. Sorry, I was muted. Hello. Good afternoon, everybody. So during the next few minutes, I would like just to provide you with a very brief summary of what is Indra's approach to the implementation of this virtual center concept. So let's start. So first, the reason for this ATM modernization. So according to the recommendation of the Airspace Architecture study, as we have seen, it is envisaged to rely on the use of the latest technologies and architectures in order to provide this resilience and scalability to the ATM network, allowing a more flexible provision of the ATM services. Although it was originally conceived to overcome the network capacity constraints, this flexibility will also allow a more efficient adaptability to the actual evolving needs, so that we can scale up or scale down depending on the required service level at any moment in time, and will enable us an efficient transition from current low traffic pandemic situation, for example, to incremental traffic increases in the future. So in this slide here, I am describing which are the more key technologies that in the industry we are using to transform the ATM architectures in the future. So the first one is virtualization and cloud-ready technology, so that the ATM services will be able to be deployed in this cloud infrastructure, normally private or hybrid, to realize the benefits of this infrastructure, such as scalability, efficiency, security, automation, etc. Secondly, the standardization itself, to implement the as-a-service business models, to facilitate interoperability and the implementation of the virtual center. This service orientation will also foster the agility to deliver new services and support a more open ecosystem. And last but not least, the cyber resilience. So business continuity must be adapted to this new digital context where the redundancy is just not enough. So ATM architectures should ensure that the services are provided from geographically decoupled locations and must provide a comprehensive response to these new cybersecurity threats. So with these technologies and with these capabilities, most of the more important benefits that the stakeholders will achieve are mainly to provide a dynamically balance the service levels to the actual demands, for example, to achieve more cost and environmental efficiency by rationalizing the investment in infrastructure, for example, and to finally also support the provision of new services and business models, such as the data service providers for the virtual center concept. So after this overview of the general ATM digitalization context, I would like to focus more on the virtual center specific concept. So virtual center are mainly oriented to decouple the provision of ATM data, the ADSPs, from the actual users of the service, the units, the ATSUs. And we need to consider all the aspects: operational, technical, organizational, or legal aspects. So from the industry, from Indra, we are mainly supporting our customers in these areas, mainly with products and systems that we facilitate implementation. So our view, as we can see here, is the provision of enhanced architecture that will allow this improved provision of ATM service while maintaining the same methods of operation. This will allow air traffic controllers to be validated and certified based on a common toolset for the same time of service, and will enable this state border independent air traffic service provision. So EuroCAE has already initiated this process to standardize the virtual center concept, as we have seen before in the working group 122. And here I have just summarized some of the most relevant challenges that we all stakeholders have to face to enable its successful implementation. For example, the operational concepts that has to be agreed, the alignment with the CSR activities that will be the main input and that will influence which concepts are already mature enough to start their standardization. And finally, the actual scope of this standardization. It should cover different service layers and provide the flexibility on how they can be implemented. But then where we are now, what is the starting point, what is available in the industry? So, well, in Indra, as a technological partner of the ITEC collaboration, we are using ITEC now as the IBP platform for supporting the different CSR activities, ensuring that then all the virtual center concepts, once validated, will be able to be timely industrialized within within ITEC systems. In addition to that, there is already some industrialized approach to materialize some of the virtual center architecture benefits. As for example, we are implemented in some of our customers. In this case, the ATM services are already provided from geographically unconstrained ADSP, data server, which is independent from the location and the number of the service units. This service provider is deployed on a cyber resilient, redundant, and virtualized data center, and it is possible to deliver the service to the units through thin clients, for example, and also provide flexibility on the interface, on the HMI interface, to be reconfigured between the different units. So apart from the clear benefits on optimizing the operational configuration or the staffing between the ATSUs, in addition to that, this approach will also streamline the delivery of new functionalities with no or minimal impact on the infrastructure for the ATSUs, as they don't need to re-implement the software changes and following a software as a service approach, and also minimize the infrastructure footprint, maintenance, and cost on each service unit. So, what are the next steps to fully accomplish the virtual center concept? So, I have just summarized the most relevant ones that will be taken in CSR, in EuroCAE, and also in the implementation of the industrialization of the systems. So first of all, the harmonization of the operational concept. So as we previously mentioned, operational procedures and certifications will need to be aligned and compatible with these concepts. So for example, in ITEC, there is already a group to harmonize this concept within the ANSPs. Also to support the different ATM service modules that were defined in the Airspace Architecture study, that will affect different service layers, for example, as ATSUs, ADSPs, or the data providers layers. Well, in the right side, I have included some of the services that are expected to be provided as identified in the AIS. And also the network infrastructure and cybersecurity aspects. In this case, the network will be a cornerstone to successfully implement these concepts. More steps. Here, I would like just to summarize some of the different interfaces between the different service layers that appear in the virtual center concept. For example, the interfaces between the service provider and the service unit, which is the one that is covered in the CSR activities where we are involved in different very large demonstrations. Also, it is foreseen an interface between data service providers, some level of synchronization to support this interoperability, and also to support this space delegation or contingency scenarios, for example, when there is a dynamic configuration of the airspace. And finally, last but not least, the interface between the service provider and the data providers. There should be some data sources at European level or at regional level that will be adapted to this new concept. As we have seen also before in the previous presentation from SIL, the new INM program, the modernization of the network manager, will have an active role in providing this common data source to the ADSPs. Also, in addition to that, it is expected that some other regional integration services will be required, for example, for meteorological, surveillance, or aeronautical information. And finally, before I finish the presentation, I would like just to show an example of a real implementation of these concepts. This is just an overview of what has been done in the exercise 1 for CSR P18 that has been successfully executed early this year. As you can see here, there was a ADSP for ATM data, also 2 ADSPs for voice, one in Spain, another in Austria. There were also different ATSUs in different European locations, for example, in Spain, in Poland, in Germany, in UK, and a service broker that is externalizing the services that was located in Austria. So the main objectives that were demonstrated in this exercise are the one here, for example, the service orientation. There were the concept of the ADSP providing services to different ATSUs. Multi-vendors are some of the ADSPs were for different providers, for example, Indra or Frequentis. Also, CWP provider independence. There were also implementations of the CWPs from different providers, in this case from Indra and DFS. And also the demonstration of the remote usage. Not only that the ATSUs are accessing the services, as we see here, from a service broker that is remotely located, but also these thin client capabilities that were, for example, used in PANSA to perform the demonstration. So thank you very much for your attention. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Raoul. Thanks for that. Moving swiftly on, I'd like to hand over to Philippe Chaffero from Thales to cover the operational transformation. So Philippe, over to you.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Philippe Chaffero, Product Line Director for all AT system and Thales Air Mobility Solution. I'm here today to give Thales viewpoint on this highly interesting topic, which is the ATM Virtual Center. As an introduction, I'd like to say that to our teams that the Virtual Center is a new reality. And years ago, it started to transform our products and our vision of business for the benefit of our customer, remote operations, integration of third-party applications, and etc. With the legacy technology, we have been able to deploy virtual centers for years in their initial definition and related data centers far away from the place where ATC operations take place, and remote approach towers, for instance. So the question today is, how can we go further? And the different trends for tomorrow markets have evolved. And as we can see on the right picture, the COVID crisis even reinforced part of them on cost, on environmental impact, on digital transformation. Thales, as an ATM provider, considers for such critical systems the overall safety of the solution for the sake of business, I mean ATC operations continuity. Thus, it appears, even if the ATM paradigm and architecture is evolving, but it's essential to keep at core of our vision the safety, the cybersecurity, and the resilience of our system. We consider two main aspects for our system. First, technical complexity increase with the new features we add every day in order to improve traffic flow, in order to facilitate ATCOs and technical operators' day-to-day activities with advices on conflict data resolution, for instance. Then, as a second point, the virtual centers concept brings more openness and thus new digital platforms, but at the end of the day, we all need to keep the integrity of the ATM data for safe operations. And considering these two main points, we still need to maintain a high level of system integration. To illustrate this, let's focus on these final users, which are the air traffic controllers. More than ever, ATCO needs a traffic view with a human-man interface which remains synthetic, accessible, easy to use, and fully reliable. Thus, complex systems come with an HMI which gathers different sources of information in a synthetic but efficient view, for instance, in track label and traffic list, and which enables ATCO to interact easily. Each click is counted with the system for clearances management, alerts, advices and handling, and supplementary information display. Considering the handling of critical information in display or modification on ADCO's HMI, tower, approach, and route system, Thales is considering new architectures enabling to safely lighten processings of multiple sources of data in HMIs. This is one technical step towards full data center virtualization. On the way to full data center virtualization, including services provided by other providers, I will mention first that the harmonization of operation uses, also called ConOps, is key. It will definitely facilitate airspace delegation. Then standardization is of course needed for interfaces and interoperability, relying on shared operational concept and common architectures from high-level perspective, of course. At the end of the day, regulation shall timely adapt to, first, the impact of new technologies, and secondly, this is quite new with this concept of virtual center associated with data center, the possible change of technical, operational, and legal responsibilities between data centers and virtual centers. As a conclusion, all above steps towards full data center virtualization will drive our industrial solution. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thanks very much for that, Philippe. And moving on again, I'd like to invite Eugenio D'Artelevi to the floor, please. Coming from IFACA, it's really important we hear the perspective of the controllers. So, Eugenio, over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Hartmann. Yes, I'm going to provide you with a practical view on Virtual Center and on the provision of the air traffic services through the Virtual Center. And it's a pleasure and an honor to be here today representing the International Federation of Air Traffic Controllers Association. Next one, please. We can start. You've seen this picture from previous presenters, so are not new for most of you. And you can see how the provision of traffic services is foreseen for the near future. In the current situation on the left, the air traffic controllers are trained and rated for specific portion of airspace, and so the license details what they can do and where they can do. So air traffic controllers are somehow specialized on that portion of airspace, and this is a great value. And this is a great advantage because air traffic controller can use the past experience to build up strategies to solve similar problems, applying similar resolution techniques. In this way, the mental workload decreased, and the air traffic controllers have more resources to add the quality to the service. And instead, in the new concept, the previous aspects seem not to be really present, and there is a need of developing tools to support the mental picture, the situational awareness, and also the teamwork for controllers. Next one. Thank you. And so I've done it, as I've just explained to you, knowledge leads not only to safety, but also to quality. Especially in the last decade, the quality of the service is one of the main item for air navigation service providers, because now the air navigation service providers are structured as companies, and so taking for granted the high score in terms of safety, the main item to consider is the capacity that is heavily influenced not only from the technical performances of the system, but also from the human performance. So human performances that are based on knowledge and experience. Next one, please. So we can consider air traffic controllers as the final node of the data flow. In fact, air traffic controllers elaborate the information they received to manage the airspace. This means that any action taken is based on available and reliable information. These two aspects shall be ensured along all the process. So it has to be considered that any layers or nodes you add can be a possible breach in the system, especially if a third part is going to provide the data for the service. In addition, the increased overall complexity and fragmentation, failures, for example, in a multiple data provision might create worse consequences than in the present one-to-one model between air data service provider and air traffic service provider. Next one, please. So we consider, let's say, the overall virtual-centered concept. There are aspects that need to be further clarified and investigated. We have briefly explored the human factor aspects and the quality aspects, but we can use, let's say, a small use case to identify other items. For example, considering a contingency in ATS provision, the idea of the virtual center is to switch from one unit to another to have a sort of seamless service. So if you think about that, in a strategic phase, we have to identify which are the units that are entitled to work in the airspace in terms of data availability and that are sufficiently equipped with the necessary number of sectors to do that. Second, in the tactical phase, we have to look to check if there is the real capacity for that. So to accommodate the traffic, you can use the spare ATC capacity you have in the sector in operation, or you have to add more sectors to do that. So basically, if you want to use an ATS unit as a backup for a seamless service, you need to consider and to plan adequate personnel to be on standby for that. And this is probably, let's say, not the best in a cost-benefit analysis. Another main topic that we can identify is the implication of providing air traffic services over foreign territories. So air traffic services can be, let's say, slightly different state by state, but the main aspect is the legal aspect in case of accident or incident. And last but not least, of course, all these aspects have to be incorporated in an adequate training program for controllers that can be, let's say, a huge program. Next one, please. So as a FATCA, we have been investigating the functional airspace blocks at first, and now virtual center since 2003. And we have developed our, let's say, first policy in 2003 on the subject. We have considered human factor aspects, so teamwork, situational awareness. We have considered technical aspects, for example, the data quality assurance, legal aspects, sovereignty and license, and also the social aspects, as mentioned before, about the staffing and possible labor disputes. So to conclude my short presentation, I think that virtual center concept has a great capability in terms of resilience and optimization, but as usual, a comprehensive cost-benefit analysis has to be conducted to really understand which of the capabilities are really necessary and successfully deployable. And of course, one element that can be of great value along all the process is the human dimension that interact with the automation to achieve the entire system goal. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Thanks, Eugenio. And moving on to our last presenter today, so we don't forget the regulatory aspects, I'd like to invite Manuel Rivas-Vila to the floor to take the regulator perspective. So Manuel, over to you.
Thank you, Peter, and good afternoon to all from Cologne. So yes, we are discussing here today about the challenges related to the implementation of new ATM solutions, in particular the virtual center concept, which these solutions are pushing the previous limits in terms of digitalization and collaboration. And there we see, if we take a step back and we look at the implementation of any new solution or as the implementation of any change to the functional system by an ATM ANS provider, we see three main elements that need to be there, to be present. The first one is for sure to have a mature concept, a well designed and developed solution. But beyond that, for sure, we need the right regulation in place. And
okay, we seem to have lost Manuel for the moment there. So we'll see if we can pick him up along the technical problem, resolve the technical problem. And
hello, can you receive me now?
Yes, I think we're back with Manuel. Back to you, Manuel.
Okay, thank you. I was mentioning the second element is having the regulatory framework, the right regulatory framework in place. This normally is the aim in a performance-based regulatory approach. Sometimes the regulatory framework needs some fine-tuning and needs to be revisited to ensure the adequacy of all relevant safety, interoperability, and environmental requirements. And last but not least, the latest element which is to be present is the availability of standards. Standards play a central role to support large-scale deployment of new technology. And the standards allow demonstration of compliance with regulatory requirements. In this regard, I just would like to stress out that in many cases, and particularly in other aviation domains, not only in ATM, ready-to-use industry standards have become a key element in many cases for a smooth certification of systems. So when discussing on the availability of all supporting material for the development and deployment of CSR solutions, a strong collaboration among all ATM partners, all ATM stakeholders is a key. And particularly referring to standards, the engagement of industry in the development process is paramount. In the opening remarks, we learned that more than 3,600 experts involved from the EuroCAI perspective. But additionally, I would like to highlight that beyond that commitment, a prerequisite to ensure that the different efforts are well aligned from inception is an appropriate alignment between the European ATM rulemaking planning instruments, and in particular here I'm looking at the EPAS, and the ATM master plan. This good alignment and understanding on what is coming in the pipeline is fundamental to ensure that all efforts are well focused and aligned in the right direction. So from EASA, we are currently focusing on further enhancing, improving the coordination of standardization activities and their alignment with regulation. In this regard, we believe that the already existing European standard coordination groups, the EASCG, EURCG, ECSCG, respectively for drones and cybersecurity standards, are called to play a very relevant role in the future, providing an adequate platform for the required coordination. And taking a step forward again and focusing on virtualization and ATM data, I would like to highlight that EASA has accompanied this evolution towards increased digitalization and collaboration in ATM. And already the current European Plan for Aviation Safety, EPAS 2021-2025, already includes a set of activities, in particularly rulemaking tasks, which are looking at making sure that the thing is ready to accommodate all these changes, all this transformation that is coming. And there we can highlight just some of them. We can see on the screen now rulemaking task 0701, which will make sure that the ATM ANS Common Requirements Regulation 373 is perfectly fit for purpose for the introduction, for example, for instance, of the ATM data service providers concept. And other rulemaking tasks that are already identified and ongoing are, for example, rulemaking tasks 0668 on addressing ATCO training and licensing. And as well, not indicated in the screen, but a fundamental role is always also played by rulemaking task 0161 on the conformity assessment, as it's addressing the potential certification of ground equipment, among this equipment, also ATM ANS critical systems. when we look in particular to rulemaking task 0668 on the regular update of ADCO rules, we have many drivers that are setting the context of this rulemaking exercise. You have many of them on the screen. I would like just to highlight that the main relevant one, probably the key one now, is also that the COVID pandemic has made this need for resilience and flexibility, scalability of the ATC provision even more obvious. It is not new, as it was said even in the opening remarks, but it has been made really obvious with the pandemic. And here, the rulemaking task is taking a staggered approach with different deliverables coming in the coming years. First of all, there is an MPA, Notice of Proposed Amendment, which is imminent for publication, which will be focusing or targeting more flexibility and intending to enhance mobility options for instructors, assessors, student ADCOs. As well as a second step, a new rulemaking group in ADCO training and competence management has been just set up. It first met in March 2021. And the group will be working on regulatory proposals on ADCO competency-based training, virtual and online training, digitalized training methods, and a proposal is expected during 2022. And beyond these already concrete milestones, the future regulatory evolutions are for sure considered in the medium to longer term perspective, for sure taking into account system-oriented training, licensing, automation, artificial intelligence, cyber resilience, digitalization of ADCO licenses. Okay, and in my last slide, I would like just to give you an example of a development which did not require any complex amendment of applicable rules, but in this case, just a development of guidance material and a slight adaptation of some acceptable means of compliance. This is the remote towers example. The remote tower concept does not imply fundamental changes regarding the applicable requirements for the provision of ATS of traffic services. Primary change introduced by the remote tower operations compared to conventional tower operations relates to the manner by which visual observation of the aerodrome and its vicinity is achieved. And this is mainly supported in the case of remote towers by the visual surveillance system. So here, the process has been since 2015, and EASA provided a first set of regulatory guidance on targeting the implementation of the remote tower concept. And since 2015, a very relevant evolution of the concept took place with further research, further development and validation. We, for example, regarding provision to multiple aerodromes, larger aerodromes, new technical enablers. As well, here I would like to highlight that EuroCAI published ED 240A, the minimum system performance, minimum aviation system performance standards for remote tower optical systems. And this standard well defines the means for the verification and operational performance requirements for these optical systems, and provides recommendations related also to interoperability, integrity, and availability of the system. So this is a very good example on how the regulatory framework and the availability of standards have evolved in this context of further digitalization and virtualization of ATM ANS provision. And with that, I can here conclude my short presentation. Sorry for the technical difficulties, and thank you very much.
So thank you very much, Manuel, and it's much appreciated. And thanks to all the panelists. We have enough time, I think, for one question. Apologies, I didn't want to cut anybody short because I think it's more important that we get the full breadth of the messages out there to the audience. So thank you. One question that I see is very popular. and I think is pertinent for all of the speakers, is around producing a common architecture perspective. In this context of a digital transformation, the question is about how we will collaborate to deliver that common architecture perspective and what it means for the standards we use in our business. Who volunteers to take that one? I'm not sure, it's across the board here. Yeah, so Philippe Chaffero, thank you.
Yes, to start, and because it's for me directly in relation to the current work done in the EuroCAE Work Group 122 around the virtual center, one of the topics we have in our current effort to create some sort of a state-of-the-art report about what is the virtual center and what could be the possibility regarding standardization of this virtual center model. I would answer to the question, but there is probably no common architecture. We have explored currently in the workgroup 122 the different flavor of architecture that could fit somewhere the intention and the target of the virtual center model. And it's really interesting that it opens the perspective of letting the different partners consider different type of architecture. The difficult question is now where we will put the necessary standards on this architecture in order that each could speak with everyone, or that we can have the coordination effect we expect at the network level. This is a challenge, and this is not yet solved, but it's really also through the work done with EuroCAE that we will be able to identify what are these least common denominator we have to create in order to synchronize all the common architectures at the plural.
Okay, thank you. I think that's probably a good answer to end on, given we're in the EuroCAE symposium, and so that we don't impact the rest of the agenda. I'll close our panel right there. I really want to thank all of my panelists today. It's been a really interesting session, and I think it's really set the scene and set the challenge that we're facing going forwards, not only in technical and operational challenges, but also related standardization. So thank you to everybody, and thanks to the audience for tuning into us for this session. And we now hand over to a coffee break before the next panel at 1500. So you're welcome to a short coffee break now. Thank you very much for everybody, and bye. Thanks.
set standards that define communication and information solutions for safety-critical environments. Reliability and performance in control centers when it matters most.
Notruf Feuerwehrrettungsdienst.
Ja, wenn sie bewusstlos wird, rufen Sie nochmal die 112.
Flughafenfeuerwehr, der Notruf.
Frequentis is the global market leader in voice communication systems.
Request information on track number Alpha Alpha 010.
As a technology driver, we provide solutions for traffic growth and capacity challenges at times when airspace users are changing. Performance is measured in seconds when lives and livelihoods are on the line. Police forces, first responders, public transport dispatchers, maritime operators, as well as search and rescue coordinators rely on Frequentis technology to keep us safe at all times. Safe transportation of people and goods is needed locally and around the world. Our focus on research and development is based on a deep commitment to innovation. We shape the way technology develops actively. We focus on technologies that impact our future and find the winning approach. We apply latest technology which builds on improved data exchange and collaboration, enabling visionary concepts of operation. Our products and our people operate globally. Locations on all continents and close cooperation with our customers give us a solid understanding of regional needs. We shape standards together with clients and global institutions. We are Frequentis, 1,900 employees globally with safety-critical DNA as well as passion and experience. We will continue to keep 3 billion passengers safe every year. We are Frequentis, and our commitment is a safer world.